and how we are God's built environment. And so I am so pleased. You can read his bio, it's really impressive. But beyond that, he is an amazing man of God, and he talks about built environment from a spiritual perspective. So I am very pleased to have Peter with us today, and let's give him a warm welcome.
Well, thank you, Heather. So hello, everyone, and so happy to be here today to think together and share with you all. So what's exciting here is that I feel that we as a community are at an inflection point. There's this convergence of so many things. We're having conversations about caring for creation, looking beyond our differences and divisiveness by embracing each other in reconciliation, celebrating diversity, advancing equity, working towards a more just and resilient community for all. So, in architecture and construction, we remodel, we update, and we build new. We assess where we are, and sometimes we decide to stay where we are, and sometimes we decide to relocate. We assess what gets salvaged and when we should start afresh. What is cool is that this ties in so well with this year's theme for the Synod, building and rebuilding. Let's consider together how we build anew and rebuild our beloved community, and how we build anew and rebuild our ministries. So, today, our goal is to learn how to see the built environment and gain a deeper understanding of its influences on us and our community and our neighborhoods. And to understand how the places we build shape us. And as we build and rebuild, we need to know who our neighbors are and how we can be in community with each other. So the three themes that I'll be discussing are community, co-creators, and conversation. So our first theme is community. So good design is about the well-being of the public realm. Okay, it's not just about an individual building, but about the greater good. In my work, I'm a passionate steward of the public realm. The quality of life in a community has to do with the quality of its public realm. Let's contrast live theater with home theater. Right? There's something so much more appealing about the civic and communal experience of people coming together to experience a live performance. That's the APT Hill Theater on the lower left corner here. Truly good design elevates the quality of life of every member of a community, especially the most vulnerable. Hence my firm's involvement in Habitat for Humanity, and it's because of a belief that design is not just for the rich and powerful, but also for those who can least afford it. Okay, good design elevates the triple bottom line of people, planet, profit. Okay, creating sustainable communities, sustainable environments, and sustainable economies. Good design creates resilient communities. Resiliency is the ability to withstand crisis. And we all know that we've gone through a crisis, and coming out of it, it's a greater awareness of what resiliency means. So the effects of the climate change and COVID are disproportionately felt by the most vulnerable in any community. And true resilience is achieved only when the most vulnerable in our community are elevated and well taken care of. Good design is flexible, looking to the long-term well-being of our community. Hence the idea of loose fit, long life. Okay? Greater flexibility helps the design defy obsolescence, and good design is being a steward of the public realm of the community. We shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. A building is more than just a structure. It is a place of trust and shapes all those who enter and engage with it. Architectural space has the power to make us sad or happy, distant or engaged, discouraged or inspired. So let's take a look at this space. And imagine working in this space for the next 20 years. So what thoughts and feelings come up, right? How would it shape you? Perhaps you're thinking, hierarchy, the queue people versus the private office people. Repetition, I'm just a cog in a wheel. I'm claustrophobic, I can't breathe. No windows, I don't know whether it's day or night. And I can't wait till 5 p.m. and I can get out of here. And then there's this space, which feels egalitarian. Everyone has equal access to the amenities of this place. There's variety, a range of places to move around and collaborate. I'm comfortable, it's open and airy, lots of windows, I have great views, and I feel connected to my community. I feel valued and enjoy hanging out here. So actually, these are the before and after photos of the same space, of the National Guardian Life headquarters that we just completed remodeling. Okay, the nature of the space has the power to evoke feelings, affect our well-being, and shape our lives. This project was a result of a collaboration with our client in rethinking their workplace. It transformed your usual Dilbertville into a light-filled workplace with collaborative spaces, the technology and the flexibility to support the way we work and into the future. Okay, in 1748, an architect named Giambattista Nolli created a plan of Rome that shows all the interior public spaces of the major buildings in the city rendered in the same way as the major outdoor spaces, that is the piazze and the streets. The Nolli plan of Rome marked a milestone in how we see architectural space, that each building has a responsibility to and contributes to the public realm. So there's this continuum of space between the building interiors and the public realm. At the scale of the city, streets and squares are corridors and rooms, while building facades are walls which define the character of these public spaces. Each individual building is responsible for the integrity of the urban fabric and the public realm and the common good. Now, this is a metaphor of how we live our lives authentically, a consistency between our inner lives and our outer lives. And Jesus has a lot to say about that, right? Just as buildings talk to each other across a public space, this is a metaphor for Jesus' mandate for us to be other-focused, the need for mutually respectful discourse. The best public spaces are those that help people be their best self, that promote community, that promote healthy interaction with others. The design of a space can set a mood. It can be peaceful or exciting, creating a sense of awe and wonder, a sense of transcendence, or something bigger than yourself, or creating a feeling of intimacy and safety. So every great city has its memorable sequence of outdoor rooms and places. So here's Madison's urban sequence, right? You've got the Memorial Union Terrace down through Library Mall, State Street, the Capitol Square, down Martin Luther King Boulevard to Lake Monona. And so here are aerial views showing the Union Terrace on the left image, and then State Street towards the Capitol in the middle, and then the Capitol towards Monona Terrace on the right. And I'm going to walk us through this sequence of spaces. And as I do this, think about what is it that draws you in to want to gather in these places. So I'll start with the Union Terrace, right? The Union Terrace has a clear identity. It's entertainment, recreation, seating, food, great views. And like a favorite sweatshirt, it's a place you feel comfortable in, and you're just happy to hang out in it. The Library Mall is a clearly defined space. There's a variety of places to sit and lie on the grass. It's an active, bustling place at the crossroads of everything in the heart of the campus. And then where the Library Mall food carts are, there's comfort that comes from a sense of enclosure, a framed view of the Capitol, the color and texture of the food carts, the rhythm and the shade of the trees. On State Street, pedestrians dominate. It's well lit, it's great nightlife. The Capitol continues to provide a reference and a focal point. It connects the campus to the town, and it's a place to gather and celebrate. The Lisa Link Peace Park is a node for activity, special events and performance. There's art and special lighting that activates the space. It's a spatial accent to the linearity of State Street. It's an urban space that is intimate enough to promote human interaction. So using State Street as an example, here are some design principles to think about as you see the built environment. Okay, there is spatial continuity between the inside and the outside. There's rhythm, the facades and the windows as they march down the street. There's scale, how big or small the building is in relationship to the human being. There's proportion, the composition of the facades with a base, a shaft, a capital. There's texture, design interests created with materials and details. There's hierarchy, there's the special elements versus the background elements. Let's talk a bit about creating a sense of place. Okay, this is the big four. One, a sense of enclosure. So the building face to building face, right, has an aspect ratio of 1:2 to 1:3. Frontages, people take precedence over cars. Parking, you should regulate the location of parking, not the number of parking spaces. And diversity, mixed use, keep the pedestrian engaged. Okay, so now we've arrived at the Capitol Square. It's a landmark, the heart of our community, a place with such a variety of experiences. It's concerts on the square and a great place for a large crowd of people to gather. There's the art fair in the square. The ring around the Capitol creates an outdoor gallery space. And of course, there's paddle and portage. The Capitol provides a special exclamation point in the middle of this fun boat race. The ring around the Capitol sometimes has cars, sometimes it's taken over by people, sometimes by boats. Farmers Market, the square becomes an open marketplace. And finally, we arrive at Monona Terrace, a convention center, a gathering place with great view of the lake, and the rooftop is a great place to gather for community events and a great place to party. Okay, our second theme is co-creators. A bit about my design process. Okay, my work as an architect is to create the built environment, and my process is listen, discover, design, in that order. Okay, listen is when I listen well and see the world through my client's lenses and understand their goals and vision. And then there's discover. It's when I analyze what I've heard to research and discover opportunities for the project. Only then do I begin to design the project. So I'm a passionate steward of my client's vision. Ultimately, when the client knows that I fully understand them, that I have their best interest in mind, that is when I have the total trust. This is where the magic happens. This is where I have the latitude to be creative in my design. And the best client relationships are ones where my client is a co-creator with me. So, for example, the Summit Inspiration Branch began with a call from Summit Credit Union CEO, Kim Spanum. Peter, I have an idea. I want a fun, whimsical, themed space that inspires Summit members to become more financially savvy so that they can realize their dreams, be it a dream home, a college dream, or a dream vacation at a beach or a grand tour of historic Europe. But I need you, Peter, to articulate it in visual spatial terms to help my senior leadership and my board understand what I'm thinking. So our design team then held, to kick this off, a brainstorming session with Summit's leadership to imagine the possibilities on this project, leading to sketches like this. So here's a photo of the existing branch. It was pretty much obsolete and wasn't really meeting their needs. So this is what we ended up with. So those sloped walls of the existing branch led to these half-timbered medieval shop houses, right, with the cantilevered floors. They're kind of inspired by the shambles in York, England. Then one thing led to another. You got the sloped walls. Of course, you're going to have like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? Well, so this project has totally transformed the branch. And a really great story is that the Summit staff enthusiastically tell me that they've had a record number of mortgage closings in the English pub. So, as we think about how we immerse ourselves in our communities to co-create our built environments, let us take a listen, discover, design approach in order to fully understand our neighbors. When the people around us know that we have taken the time to understand them, that we see the world through their lenses, that is when we build mutual trust and make our shared visions a reality. Sometimes that shared vision is not exactly what we wanted, but it's exactly what the community needs. In my work as an architect, the focus on my listening extends beyond the client, who is the one who's paying for the project, to the neighbors and the other stakeholders in the community. So as we start understanding our neighborhoods and community, I'd like to encourage us to decenter our priorities and recenter our neighbors. This involves going from a person who does not notice to a person who notices, participating in neighborhood associations, celebrations, and events, showing up for public hearings, Plan Commission and Urban Design Commission meetings, and playing an active role where zoning and land use decisions are made. Being co-creators means having an attitude of humility and seeking the well-being of others, as we are called to in the Sermon on the Mount. This will enable us to live creatively and abundantly in community. Over the past 2 decades, we have been collaborating with the City of Madison to strategically transform what was once the aging Villager strip mall in Park Street. So this is the before shot of it. So today, it is the Village on Park, a vibrant community asset and a catalyst for the revitalization of the south side of Madison. It stands as a shining testament to our collective ability to co-create and shape the public realm for the betterment of all. This is the story of a collaboration between city and community, public and private entities, involving the engagement of the entire community of diverse ethnicities, cultures, and age groups. Multiple on-site visioning sessions and workshops help align neighborhood goals with user groups and stakeholders that would occupy the site. So the photos here show that we worked with the neighborhood kids to create this really cool peace mural for the project's atrium. By creating community connections via the arts, the mural reflects diversity and pride in the neighborhood through a lasting community art piece for all to enjoy. So the collaboration continues today as we just updated the master plan to include the Black Business Hub, a parking structure, affordable housing, and a vibrant pedestrian-oriented town square with landscape areas and plaza spaces for community conversation and play. Okay, let's talk about inclusive design. Take a look at this slide. What do you see? And I'm just going to ask you to just shout out, and I'll repeat it. Now, what do you see in this slide? Old. Neglect. Safety concerns.
Inside walls that are now outside.
Inside walls that are now outside. Well, great. So, Willie Jennings, the Yale University professor and theologian, and author of the book, The Christian Imagination, Theology and the Origins of Race, tells the story of a vacant lot just like this one, that was the playground for the kids in a neighborhood. When the vacant lot was purchased for development and fenced off, overnight, the kids playing in that lot became illegal due to no fault of theirs. So our communities need places for our teenagers to hang out that are private enough for them and yet in full view of the public. The Yes Loitering Project, as opposed to No Loitering, right? The Yes Loitering Project in New York City is a creative response to this challenge. Justice for youth means public spaces where they can hang out and be themselves without fear of reprisal. Their goal is imagining a public realm more welcoming to youth. So I Googled the legal definition of loitering, and it means, quote, to sit, stand, loaf, lounge, wander or stroll in an aimless manner, or to stop, pause, or remain in an area for no obvious reason. One person's loitering is another person's community. Who is my neighbor? The parable of the Good Samaritan is about diversity, inclusion, and embrace. We take in visual cues to create stories about people, make decisions about who belongs. Here's a story about private property and the public realm. My family and I were on a trip, and we stopped in a small town for lunch. We decided to buy some takeout lunch and find a park somewhere to have the lunch. To our surprise, we could not find a single designated public space in that entire town where we could just sit and have our lunch. So finally, we found an elementary school and sat on the edge of the grounds and had our lunch, feeling a little uncomfortable, wondering whether someone would kind of come up to us and say, like, why are you here, and ask us to leave. Worse, they could have called the police on us. So it's important that every town has places where anyone can just show up and sit and be. So I was at a public listening session envisioning the design of the waterfront places in Madison. And the speaker painted a picture of this quiet and idyllic place. And as I listened, it struck me that there are many ways of enjoying the public realm. For the public realm to be truly inclusive for all, it needs to be welcoming to both who are seeking a quiet, contemplative waterfront park, as well as those who want to enjoy it with celebratory music and dancing. So my dream is that we will see diversity, equity, access, and inclusion as something beautiful, something to be celebrated rather than something to be tolerated. So as you think about inclusive design, here are some definitions. Okay, there's social justice. This means that everyone deserves equal economic, political, social rights and responsibilities. And then there's design justice. It recognizes that everyone is an expert in their own experiences. That addressing injustice through design means elevating the voices of the people most affected by the challenges and working towards solutions. So this is the approach to listening to the community stakeholders before we design anything. We say to them, you are the expert. I'm not designing for you, I'm designing with you. I seek to understand how you move, speak, and live. I can't design without you in your space. How do you want the space to be like? So my goal is creating spaces that you can thrive in. So that's essentially our process of design. Okay, as the Chief Design Officer at Strang, I champion the idea that each and every member of our interdisciplinary design team is a designer in their own right. Okay, no one has the monopoly on good ideas. To generate ideas on our projects, we hold charrettes where everyone, including the administrative staff, is invited to share their design ideas. As a design firm, our key differentiator from our competition is in the realm of ideas and the ability to come up with a better way of doing things. I love working in a diverse team and having our ideas challenged, because having our blind spots identified gives us those aha moments which ultimately result in better design solutions. So the lesson here is, similarly, living in a diverse community means being constantly aware that each one of us is in need of grace. We all have our blind spots, we all have our biases. Being open to having our blind spots pointed out and celebrating when we have that aha moment. That's how we get better. So it makes total sense that we celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, because a more diverse community is more creative, more innovative, successful, ultimately more prosperous, more just, and simply more fun. Okay, over the past few decades, there's been a sea change in our collective conception of space and place. I'll be reading through these lists of words under several themes that describe this movement toward a more holistic and meaningful built environment in the public realm. So firstly, just the overarching goals of the built environment. So going from a paradigm of dictation to inspiration, from enforcement to motivation, from what to why, from consumer to steward, from uniformity to diversity, from artificial to authentic, from a tenant mindset to that of ownership, inward-looking to community-focused, formal to informal, hierarchical to egalitarian, physical and aesthetic to holistic. Now about land use, moving from a landscape of separation to one of integration, from single-use zoning to mixed-use zoning, from work to live, work, play, from climbing the corporate ladder to a work-life balance. A bit about site design, from anonymity to a sense of place, from objects to space, from automobile orientation to pedestrian orientation, from single-mode transportation to multimodal transportation, from a relationship of the street that says street, parking, then building, to street, building, and then parking behind. Setbacks, from going from setbacks to build two lines, from privatization of space to meaningful public space, from low density to high density. Then a bit about architecture and interior design, from a physical and aesthetic focus to a holistic one, from mass production to craftsmanship, from cradle to grave to cradle, as we think about creation care, from prescriptive to evidence-based. So I want to focus on two of the above strategies that make for a more well-designed built environment, right? I'm going to focus on designing for the pedestrian and the whole idea of objects versus space. So firstly, designing for the pedestrian. The woonwerf, and that's a Dutch word from the Netherlands. The woonwerf is a street with visual cues that say that the place belongs to the pedestrian. The drivers of motorized vehicles immediately feel out of place, that they don't belong, that they slow down and watch for kids playing in the street, for pedestrians and bikes. So these are regular streets that you can actually drive on, but they're focused on the pedestrian, right? So the characteristics are narrow street for traffic calming, changes in the texture of the paving with brick or cobblestones, the scale of the facades, landscaping and elements that define the space, in gardens and interior spaces of buildings that look out onto the street. And here's a more urban example of a woonwerf. Okay, secondly, let's talk about objects versus space. So let's compare West Town Mall with the State Capitol Square. So these are both object buildings, right? They're both landmarks in their own way. So West Town Mall is set in a sea of asphalt and does not create meaningful space. The State Capitol creates meaningful space, a sense of place with all the attributes we just talked about. Okay, our next theme, our third theme is conversation. The slow church movement calls churches to focus on community in all its slowness and messiness. It grew out of the story of Englewood Church in downtown Indianapolis, which transitioned from its life as a large city church into a thriving, vibrant neighborhood church deeply embedded within its community. Englewood was able to make this transition because it chose to embrace the fact that place was inextricably linked to their identity. As their numbers went down from 2,000 to 100 in the mid-1980s, they chose to remain in the neighborhood even as the local population changed to be more socially and ethnically mixed due to white flight to the suburbs. This congregation took their time, gradually over a decade, hence the term slow church, to be very intentional in their discipline and practice of conversation. They became more able to be present with one another, getting to know each other and their differences to the point that they could trust each other as a community. Only then were they able to serve their greater community, learning to resist the temptation to fix or control. They listened to the needs of the community and used their common trust that they had built as a congregation to meet the needs of the community by sharing their gifts and skills. For example, they had neighbors who wanted to start a business, and the church had vacant buildings in the community, and they had skills among themselves, carpentry, finance, and they worked together with their neighbor to get them established and in the business. So it's a win-win. We build our congregation community, we become part of the broader community of the neighborhood. We are love in action. We are image bearers of Christ. We are God with skin on to our neighbors. The church is the body of Christ. It was never meant to be a building. Nor was it meant to be a drive-in facility where we expect people to come and see inside our church building. But it was meant for us to go out and love and serve. When we know and trust each other as a congregation, we have a greater capacity to go outside the walls of our buildings into knowing our neighbors. And knowing our neighbors means knowing the kids who play in our neighborhood, knowing the other churches and the other businesses in our neighborhood, hanging out the people where they hang out in the neighborhood, getting to know their strengths, their needs, their potential, seeking the welfare of the people, the place where God has sent us. Our goal is to create places where people prosper. Ray Oldenburg, in his book, The Great Good Place, talks about the 3 spheres of life: the home, the workplace, and public spaces, which he dubbed the 3rd place, specifically those that host, quote, regular, voluntary, informal, and happily anticipated gatherings of individuals beyond the realms of home and work, unquote. Think your favorite coffee shop. Great 3rd places intentionally blur the boundaries of all 3 spheres to draw people together and help them to be their most authentic selves. So the concept of the 3rd place has permeated our conception of space and place so much that in the architectural world there continues to be this convergence of design character of hospitality spaces, workplace, and public space that emphasizes collaboration, coexistence, and community. So the journey of co-creating our built environment is a conversation. The destination, our goal, is a built environment that is characterized by conversational spaces. And as we think about our built environment, let's think about moving from simply meeting needs to forming deep relationships that are based on mutuality and abundance. The built environment of a 3rd place is different from a lecture hall, or for that matter, most worship spaces. A 3rd place shapes us and sets us up for mutuality and conversation. In lieu of a frontal, linear, unidirectional paradigm, a 3rd place is organic, circular, and omnidirectional. We need to be willing to welcome people who are at risk in your neighborhood and be prepared for the needs that come with them. Let us think of Jesus' answer to the question, "Who is my neighbor?" in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Our goal is conversation and mutuality, and we need to subvert the notion that we are the benefactor and the people we serve are the client. We need to encounter people as peers. We are no better than our neighbors. It is not a transactional handout. How do we live our faith in our neighborhood? We need to be immersed in our neighborhoods to listen and to understand what the needs are and understand where our passions meet those needs. And to quote Frederick Buechner, let's find where our greatest joy meets the world's greatest need. So let's have new eyes to see the built environment of our neighborhood. So I'd like to invite you now to turn to your neighbor and gather in groups to discuss the following 2 questions. And after a few minutes, I would like to ask you to share your findings with the greater group here. Okay? First question is, what are the conversational places that you love to gather, and what is it about these places that draw people in to stay a while? And then what inspires you to be intentional about community, and what holds you back? So let's take some time to just talk about it, and then we'll transition to, there'll be folks with mics to kind of talk about it.
Hi, my name is Sean. I'm Sean. I'm from the Cambridge area, from Grace Lutheran Church. Where we live, we have a place called Veterans Park, where we have, summer concerts. We gather for tree lighting in December and stuff. And during the summer months, we have Friday get-togethers, usually involving bands and, as much as possible, local artists. And what I enjoy the most is the difference in the generations, where we have kids that are like 2, 3, 4, all through the school ages, and adults that are different areas of your life, and they get to mingle. I think it's good for the younger generations to be around the older adults, A lot of them, because parents choose to have children later, don't have grandparents. And I think it's good experiences for them. And I feel when I go, I feel the Holy Spirit there, connecting everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm coming. I knew I'd get my steps in somehow.
I'm Eleanor, and my favorite places, community places, are coffee shops, I think. Me and my friends really like to go there and hang out, and also just like public parks. I live in Madison, and there are quite a few of those. Sometimes it's a little awkward when there are kids there, but I think it's also important to, have all the different people in one place. And I think what holds me back is fear, but mostly just fear of not being accepted, because it's scary to meet new people and talk to new people, because what if they don't like you, that's scary. And also time, because relationships take a lot of time to build.
Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm from Emmanuel Lutheran in Watertown. So we were just discussing that Watertown has spent some time renovating our library and to have an incredibly open children's library space and a dedicated teen room. And not only that, they also have just created a town square in front of the library and across from Mullins, which is our local ice cream shop. And which Watertown and with ice cream. But anyway, and so those people, it draws people in, similar to the coffee shop context, and also similar to the first point, is it's intergenerational. It's everybody loves ice cream, right? Libraries draw people from all contexts. It's a free, open space. And that's where people start to have connection that they didn't know was before. I'm a mom, and my toddler runs around screaming, and your toddler's screaming too, so let's, band together and chit-chat, and the next thing I know, we're friends, kind of thing. And going off of that, to be intentional about community, it's my children, wanting them to have a space where they are able to feel loved and supported, and more importantly, safe, where they're able to connect with, the gentleman down the street, or the guy who grew up in Watertown, or the sweet lady who's commenting on my children. I feel the more we get to know each other in our community, it's that village, literal village that we always talk about. It takes a village to raise our kids, and that's the village. And so that's where I come from.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Claire. I think a space that I have seen recently is that in my high school, we just created, we have always had just classrooms, and that's kind of been it. And recently we added these team areas, they're called, where it's very open and people can go there and sit and talk. And I have seen a lot of increase in community because of those spaces, so I think that's important.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Nelson at St. Mark's Lutheran Church in South Madison, and I noticed something interesting at our free Friday meal. We have it every week, and before the pandemic, all the tables were in rows, and it felt like a boarding house, and people had to talk over each other. And then when we opened up again, we did takeout during the worst of COVID, opened up again, but put large spaces between each table. So there are 4 people per table with a large space between tables. And community just happened. All of a sudden, they're not having to talk over each other. I'm able to sit down more easily and talk with them. And they get up and go talk to other people because they can actually get up out of the row and mingle around. And that community has transformed also into them checking in on each other, the ones who they know have health issues, or the mom and daughter who were homeless. People started getting up and just checking on them and listening to them. I was able to get to know people better because of this reconfiguration, and so now people come up to me and say, I need winter boots. and I ask them what size they are and make a plea to whoever I can make a plea to, and all of a sudden I've got the right size boots for this person. So just changing the configurations of the tables made all of this difference.
Thank you.
Well, I feel like a heathen because the place in our neighborhood is the Harmony Bar, where people go. Yeah, yes. Excuse me. I'm not telling. And what's special about that bar, and I've been to a few, so I can do some comparison. What's special about that bar is that it's very informal, nothing fancy, but a lot of space, and I can echo what she said about St. Mark's over there. A lot of spaces to sit, different configurations, small and large, 2 rooms so that there can be something going on in one room, and the other room has space for talk and chat. And of course, refreshments. It's always very handy to have if you want people to sit down and spend some time. That's all I've got.
Yes. My community place is my church, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Janesville. And we're very pleased with this. But I must tell you, my wife and I had the experience of moving from place to place and walking into many churches as total strangers. And as a total stranger in but a few churches, we couldn't find a place to join the community. People were busy talking to people they knew. And what you're looking for in our churches to get beyond that is be ready to talk to people you don't know. Be ready to, and beyond a hello, how are you conversation, I'm fine, that's a little empty. Share who you are and let them share who they are. And that person will become part of your community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Okay. You got the microphone.
My name is Debbie Krebs, and I'm here with my delegation from Vermont Lutheran Church, about 8 miles down 78. And Mr. Tan, one thing that we discussed is the real difference that all of your conversation was urban-based, and we are a very rural church, very, very rural church. And with Vermont, our real conversation place is our fellowship hall after our Sunday worship service. So almost everyone goes down and there's marvelous conversation. But Vermont, about 18 months ago, had the true gift to purchase 110 acres of property from farmers that we have reconverted into prairie land, trails. We had magnificent gifts from members. We've created outdoor space, and the long-term goal is that this will become a destination for folks all over the area. We're creating an outdoor space to make it a welcoming space for the community.
Well,
good afternoon, everyone. I am serving down in Mazomanie, and we bought a school, 63,000 square feet, because we felt the Holy Spirit was moving us to do something. You know, there's that story about putting new wine in old wineskins. So that's what we're trying to do down there, and to have a worship space, but also to have a community-based center where we'll have things like pickleball, 6 a.m. walk and coffee. We've got a gymnastic group in there, and we'll be sharing that space. So I hate to bring bad news. I come from the Episcopal tradition. I was for 25 years I've been in the Episcopal Church and just switched over to be the associate with Rob Nelson down in Maizomani. I hate to tell you this, but what we're doing isn't working. The demographics are really bad for those of us in the so-called main church. So we have to do something really audacious and powerful and spirit-filled. That ought to be our wake-up call. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And we'll have one last one, and I think... Me?
Hi, I'm Craig Penn from St. Luke's, Middleton, and we are struggling with this particular issue right now and making just the space welcoming. But speaking as a native Californian who's only lived in the Midwest for 6 years, I was struck by your photographs or your drawings of these lovely outdoor spaces that can occur maybe, 3-4 months of the year. So the issue in terms of reaching out to the community is we have walls and we have interior spaces. And to me, how does one solve the problem of looking like we're welcoming to the community, but people are not really enthusiastic about coming through doors? I don't have an answer to that, and I'm just going to leave it up to your brilliant design expertise.
Okay, well, you have one last one. Okay.
I'm a member here, and a few years ago, one of our members had an idea for a memorial for her husband that passed away. And if you go around the church, outside of the chapel, there are 2 benches. It's a prayer ground. We have people from the community. They walk the bike trail, they come up and they sit, they gather. We have church gatherings out there as well.
Well, thank you for all your sharing. And let this be just the beginnings of a conversation. I mean, you're having lunch after this. Let's continue these conversations about how we can create places and relationships that go beyond the transactional to the truly conversational. So a few words on space and place. So space is essentially a volume that's defined by space-defining elements, hence length, height, width. Place is a space that has meaning, hence the phrase, quote, sense of place, and quote, placemaking. Space can simply be defined. Place happens when the space acquires meaning, when it's inhabited by people who give it meaning. So every piece of land is unique. Each has its own story, history, people, sense of place, topography, geology, climate. We don't own the land. The land belongs to God. We belong to the land. We belong to God, and we belong to each other. We are stewards of the land for a while, and the land will outlive us. Communities, that is villages, towns, cities, are old. Countries or empires come and go. The land is an integral part of God's creation. God speaks to us through 2 books, the Scriptures and His creation. Romans 1:20 says, we can look at everything God made and can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature. So I'll be sharing several projects where we were able to create places that have meaning, places of mutuality, conversation, and abundance. And to help us think outside the box, I've made the conscious decision to highlight only our non-church projects. One of the cool things about what I do as an architect is that each project is unique. I don't come up with a design like a car and then mass produce it. Every piece of architecture, every part of the built environment has a distinct site with its distinct sense of place. So I've learned a lot about the importance of place working with the Ho-Chunk Nation here in Madison. The very land that we are on in this region otherwise known as Tejop, the Four Lakes region, has been the ancestral homeland of the Ho-Chunk people for thousands of years. I've learned the heartbreaking story of what they've gone through, having been relocated several times from this place. They are a resilient people. Every time they've been relocated, they've come back to this Four Lakes region that they call home. I've come to admire the Ho-Chunk people for their resilience and their sense of humor and the connection to the land and this special place. In 2016, the Ho-Chunk Nation voted to establish a Bill of Rights for nature. It was a tribal constitutional amendment. It was the first tribal nation in the US to do so. The circle is very important to the Native American people. The circular form of their powwow grounds and their traditional dwellings. On the lower right photograph is a Ho-Chunk Chiporoke. They are a tangible expression of the essence of their culture and identity in so many ways. These circular spaces are conversational places that express their love of storytelling. In contrast to the transactional nature of so much of our lives today, these indigenous places exude mutuality and community. So my experience collaborating with the Ho-Chunk people on their Four Lakes District and Heritage Center has been a transformative experience for me. I'm forever changed. I've grown to understand their culture and vision as they build and rebuild their community today. They have their history and heritage, their reverence to their land, their current day needs, and their dreams for the future. This project is about connection to the land and restoring it to its natural glory. The existing wetland on the site will be carefully restored, and the surrounding prairie and oak savanna will feature interpretive walking paths that enable the visitor to enjoy the beauty of the landscape and learn from the experience. Every place and community has a story, and the one thing I've learned about the Ho-Chunk is their love of storytelling. This proposed Heritage Center is designed to share, preserve, and tell the stories of the Ho-Chunk Nation. A note of caution as we seek to understand from the diverse and indigenous voices around us, we have to be very careful to avoid the pitfalls of cultural appropriation. Hence, the architecture of this Heritage Center is conceived of in an abstract, non-literal idiom in order to create a more timeless context for celebrating and honoring the culture and history of the Ho-Chunk people. The circular form, the grassy event space, and the Heritage Center are an expression of their culture of mutuality and community. The Touchstone Theater that we designed for American Players Theater, or APT for short, is all about place. Creating a new indoor theater for a theater group that's performed outdoors in their very special outdoor theater in the woods for the last 30 years. So we transformed an existing gravel parking lot into a restored prairie that is the foreground to their new indoor theater. The goal was to capture American Players Theater's trademark journey up the hill to that very special experience of place. During this walk through the landscape, you shed your critical self and are transported into this magical place. As stewards of APT's culture and limited budget, we used off-the-shelf materials of the quintessential Wisconsin agrarian buildings and landscape to turn frugality into an aesthetic virtue. So how do you create an indoor space for a group of people who have been performing outdoors for the past 3 decades? So we use these huge barn doors that open up the theater to the lobby and the landscape beyond before shows, during intermission, and after shows. The entire theater house is a performance space, drawing actor and audience together in an experience of conversation and mutuality. The D Lab at the Ascent Innovation Campus is the transformation of an underutilized lot in Rapid City, South Dakota, into a tech business incubator. It's a catalyst for the transformation of an entire district of the city is a catalyst for innovation and entrepreneurship. And it's a catalyst for conversation, co-creation, and community. This is their major kind of event space within the building. The most sustainable building is one that already exists. So this was an obsolete, underutilized existing cafeteria at the American Family Insurance campus. It was used by only a handful of people there every lunch hour. So the AmFam BL2 Cafe now is the most popular third place on the entire campus. It's used for eating, for meeting, for collaborating every minute of the day. There are a variety of places with a variety of seating and furniture configurations with varying levels of community and privacy to support and encourage conversation, collaboration, co-creation, and community. WellBe Financial's goal is to move from a transactional paradigm to a relational one, using digital banking to streamline transactions in order to free up time and space to develop relationships with customers and members. This credit union branch in Houston, Texas, is about creating a welcoming third place for the community to hang out for educational and community events. So with the goal of being hyper-local to the Houston context, we created a welcoming front porch for draws from Texas vernacular architecture. The deep overhangs of the roofs and the porch provide cool shade from the hot Texas sun. And the porch, along with the transparency of the architecture and large garage doors, welcome the public with southern hospitality. So you're welcome to grab a cup of coffee at the coffee shop. There's actually a coffee shop in there that they collaborated with Bean here, a local coffee shop, and stay a while. The place is designed for conversation and mutuality and the development of relationships, and ultimately for WellBe Financial to become a trusted advisor in the community. So the Agora at Fitchburg Center is about doing the right thing for the greater good. So what can be more indigenous for a city in the upper Midwest than a town green that consists of a restored prairie? The public is invited to enjoy the walking paths, benches, artwork, the contemplative and communal spaces. This project required a public-private partnership, a TIF, that is a tax incremental financing for the parking structure underneath the entire building that freed up the ground plane for meaningful public space. So it's about creating a sense of place with meaningful third places where community happens. This project is not just about the buildings, but a gift to the community of an enhanced public realm, a context for farmers markets, art fairs, and special events. It's about restoring harmony to the land. Land is inextricably linked to place and community. Restoring a prairie is a long, patient process, looking to the long term. It involves a commitment to weeding the invasives during the first few years and putting up with criticism from the uninformed who say that it looks terrible, it looks like a bunch of weeds. So the right image is a section through a typical prairie, a cut through the ground, right? And 19/20 of the biomass of a prairie is below ground. Only 1/20 is above ground. So in contrast, I've highlighted in a red circle there the root system of a manicured Kentucky bluegrass lawn, otherwise affectionately known as a drug-dependent rug. So the prairie is burned every few years to remove invasives and restore the land. I love the metaphors and lessons we learn from prairies, like looking to the long term. Good things come to those who wait, and the importance of deep rootedness so that we have the resiliency to face the ups and downs of life. So this project is about the greater good, placemaking, the ecology of the land, our neighborhood, and our community. So the upper right photo is the before photo. It shows a concrete swale where the paradigm was to get the stormwater as quickly as possible off the property and send it to the Gulf of Mexico. The lower left is a storm event where the prairie is doing exactly what it's meant to do. It's a sponge to hold the water and filters it and slowly releases it. And my favorite is the lower right photo. It shows clear filtered water, stormwater from the prairie, meeting the muddy water at the swale along Fish Hatchery Road. So it's doing exactly what it's meant to do. Placemaking spans from generation to generation. It's about looking to the long term and defying obsolescence. Using durable materials is a good idea, but it's not enough. A building that is in great physical condition, but is obsolete, will be torn down. To defy obsolescence, you need to have a flexible design that is able to accommodate change of use. The first use, the second use, the third use, the fourth use. That's the paradigm, loose fit, long life, right? To the extent possible, our goal is to create a timeless architecture that stands the test of time. We not only design the built environment for the long term, we create the context for the long-term flourishing of the community. A society grows great when people plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. So in closing, I'd like to commission us to see our neighborhoods and communities as people of faith in light of our conversation today. We are people of the place that we are in. We need to move away from the concept that land or place is something that we own, to something that we belong to, that we are stewards of, that God has created place. God has rooted us in a community, and we need to ask the question, how do we seek the welfare of the community that we belong to? How we value space and place as an opportunity for community, connection, and belonging. Let's be a people who are passionate about stewardship and placemaking. My deep desire is that we move from an architecture of objects to one of space, from a landscape of separation to one of integration, and from an emphasis on the private realm to a celebration of the public realm. Let this be a metaphor for living a life that's not about ourselves, but for others, that in losing our lives, we might find a life that's lived to its fullness. Thank you.